Yeah, you're good. Okay, sounds good. Boom, done. So the trap overthinking why your brain portrays you. First, let's call it out. Overthinking isn't laziness or lack of its skill. It's performance color born from good intentions gone wrong. And let me ask everyone here: when the first thing that you think of like when things go wrong, you think of like how can you fit yourself and what is the image of your role to a team. So let's just say you're playing Jet. You don't get the first few kills. You start the game off at 0-3. Next thing you know, you're thinking about how you can play with your teammates better. You start thinking about like not dying necessarily, right? But in a ranked setting, you're already subtracting your own performance and limiting yourself from your value that you could potentially bring. Maybe instead of like thinking of everything so bad, you start thinking of what are other chances I could do to control my fights. So I like to call it an 80-20 rule. So this is not necessarily part of my notes, but to allow everyone here to understand it more, my 80-20 rule is 80% of the time, you focus within your own kit and capabilities, controlling your own fights. So you can use your own utility, you can control your swings, you can control your pacing, whatever you could do to win these small exchanges at gunfights. And 20% of the time, the area is going to be natural team play where you could easily fit in within the moment. So what do I mean by that? So let's just say like if you're a Silva or a Jet, you start to play mid. Let's just say like you've done your job, you were contesting, whoever's here, maybe you had a smoke, maybe you have a recon over here. And then the enemy team ends up doing some sort of B slam, B execute, into your Astra. And in that moment, instead of commanding your Astra what to do, you're in the headspace of, okay, what can I do to make my first exchange successful? You're thinking about how you're taking your first engagement and how you're pathing into it. Not necessarily helping the Astra. But do you see how like that kind of mentality is rather than like telling the Astra what to do and you're kind of just autopiloting running in here? It's a lot more digestible to be able to be like, okay, how am I going to fit in within the scenario that I am running myself into? I see my teammate fighting on site, but I'm not going to command and force them to do anything for me necessarily. It's a rank setting. End of the day, you're playing with strangers. They're not going to necessarily listen as well as a group of 5 players on a team or high elo on the higher end of the ladder. Let me assume that this is in the rank range of like gold, platinum, silver, or even ascended. They're not necessarily going to think because they're getting overstimulated themselves. So I'm just going to think of making my own impact. And based off of that, let's just say you end up getting a kill, enemy chamber, boom, right here. Maybe you even end up killing the planner. And based off of that, let the round naturally play out, but you keep focusing on yourself to be able to close out these rounds. I'm not telling you to run it down. I'm not telling you to like play it safe. But do you see how like this becomes a lot more digestible moment where it became scary into, okay, I'm just going to take it one step at a time. What are my fights that I'm taking? And I work from there. And when you work on this skill within any sort of like rank range that you are in, you start to learn more. You're going to make mistakes, but you also start to understand like how you like to do things and how you're achieving a consistent performance. Does that make sense to everyone here? The 80-20 rule? And this is for any role. So even like especially for initiators, if you love to play solo, let's just say you even like to play smokes. Sometimes throwing a smoke across the map, let's just say you're the Astra now, in this case. Throwing a smoke across the map immediately to help your teammates, because sometimes be like not as good value. Maybe throwing the smoke costs them getting a kill, but you had that good intention of helping them out. Maybe you're rushing yourself to help the team, and you're not thinking about yourself anymore, where now you're potentially running to a lurk that you're not keeping account of, and you die. Even for smokes players, 80% of the time, controlling your fights again. Focus on how you want to use your own utility to win your fights. Same thing for your teammates. Let them attempt to get a kill first, unless they're truly asking for a smoke. I don't like to pop it. I personally don't like to pop it. I like to pop it after potentially an exchange happens, or I clearly see them getting value and running away. Again, right? How does that help you? It helps you not it doesn't force yourself to be a team player necessarily. It lets you play out the game naturally of how it is. There's so many times I see this mistake on Haven where my Silva is fighting. My Jet is fighting. They're on site, having maybe some sort of cross, and my Omen player across the map, they just throw random smoke, or your Clove just throws a random site smoke. Isolate your teammates, and then these guys end up like having a hard time kind of playing with each other. You're not necessarily gonna have it. It's not gonna be as problematic, like let's just say lower elo. But imagine if like you were more in present, where you were more specific on the reason why you want to throw smoke. Maybe you just want to disrupt the short players or the long players. And because of that, you're not overly thinking about the enemy team, but you're just thinking about like the small pieces that could crumble the whole pie. And that's what I mean by priority tasking is there's going to be a trend that everyone's going to see across. I'm stuck on filling. Yeah, and even same thing for filling gaps. Sometimes I don't think like filling gaps is necessarily important. I think sometimes it's more important to acknowledge there's a gap. You can communicate it. If your teammates don't hear it, like I'm kind of like brutal about it. I'm like, okay, well, I kind of told you there was a gap. But sometimes, like too, like if you had a play going down mid, but you know there's a garage gap, I see a lot of players, even higher elo like Radiance, they would try to fill the gap immediately, but they had a good play in motion, but they canceled their own play to fill a gap and do nothing in the game. And I feel like as a learning player, like you should capitalize on your reads and not always filling gaps. So again, 80% of the time, you control your fights. 20% of the time, you maybe play for the team. There's gonna be times where like you do have to, but it's a lot less than you actually think of filling gaps. But going back to this, is you're processing a ton of information. So do you see how my examples, you're already going from a problem into a solution? Straying from your strengths, maybe, right? If you want, sometimes when you're being too much of a team player, right? So I saw somebody in chat said that they struggle because they're always filling gaps. So maybe you're already straying from your strengths. Maybe you're the type of player where you want to be fighting with somebody. You're maybe rotating to fight rather than like rotating to fill a gap. Maybe you don't thrive like that. And especially you're an agent. Especially if you're a duelist, okay? Keep that in mind. If I see you have an op and you're filling gaps across the map instead of working for picks, I think you're already doing something wrong. Because you want to probably set the presence of an op, right? Maybe have the Silva player or the guy with the Guardian or worse weapon fill the gaps because you're working on creating the team at one advantage with an op. And then a lot of times, because you're also becoming uncomfortable yourself, you're also straying away from your flow state. Now that you're second guessing, should I drive, should I shoot, pass or ISO? You're abandoning what made you elite. And this gets a lot of players too, like especially when you go through those strides. Let's just say like when you were in form, were you necessarily second guessing yourself when you were playing at your best? Probably not. And when you're doing uncomfortable things, why are you doing so many uncomfortable things at once to think that will win your team the game? Like in reality, like you need to set back and realize that maybe I need to become more comfortable with my game. If I do need to improve on something, make it very digestible and workable. For me personally, I am given 2 advice every few days, and I'll focus on those fundamentals over everything. Because it is able where I have good amount of habits, new habits, and because of that, I could mix those two together and become doable rather than only doing one habit I usually do and 5 new habits and overstimulating myself and overthinking everything because I'm not used to what kind of play that that puts me in. How did it make the enemy play? How does it position me? How much differently I need to play? Does that make sense to everyone? Like if you're doing too many new things at once, you're just going to like crumble and become frustrated, and now your growth just becomes like very like stale, or you step backwards a little bit too much. And then yeah, and then also this is also a very like big point too, and I want to like emphasize on this: trying to satisfy new teammates, even trying to satisfy your duel. Sometimes like your duel, you just play. They don't expect you to always be the best player, but they expect you to be a reliable teammate. But that's a different definition. Reliable could also mean you hold your ground. You don't necessarily always have to throw the perfect utility rings. I want everyone here to really work on their mechanics, their positioning. How are you positioning yourself against a lot of problems that you're seeing coming? For example, like if the enemy team is coming to an A hit, What are your different options that you can play against your read? Not always running back site and just hiding. But when you think of like very few problems at a time, 1 or 2, it becomes a lot more like you become a lot more present again, where like you're like, okay, like if they're gonna come on site and I'm playing about a duel, I'm just gonna tell my duel I'm gonna play here, but I'm not necessarily controlling them how I'm playing the scenario. Even in a duel aspect, let them fill the gaps of how you want to play the game, and vice versa. So if your duel decides to choose a power position, I'm just gonna choose like random agent, like let's say Raze, and you're the Brimstone. Let yourself decide how you want to play off of it, unless they tell you, hey, I'm taking first, and then off of that, you're like, okay, maybe I hide if you're in a higher elo, and then you swing off of them, or you throw a smoke, and you're playing anti-util, and you play with them. And again, like that's helping you achieve value because you're plugging yourself into plays, and you're prioritizing tasking where like, okay, my win condition is my Raze, and I'm clearly just playing off of them. So I kind of just went into this quite a bit. Like I kind of like give you guys a lot of examples left and right. You cut out, we didn't hear the whole thing. Like there, can we go back to when you were talking about a little bit about your team is playing pocket? Camera died. Is this good right now? Camera's good? Okay. Let me move my mic a little bit closer for everyone. Here, let me raise the volume a little bit too. All right. Okay, so to just go back to my example before I get into the questions is, think of it like this. Even when you're playing with your duel, and they decide to go first or be the tip of the spearhead, which I like to say like the start of a play, taking first. Instead of commanding them of what you need to do, what they need to do, worry about what you could do to attach yourself to the play. This is actually something that Cal Jetson taught me just as of yesterday when we scrimmed against franchise teams. So let's just say the Rez is taking first A short, and he says, I got first. And you could just simply look at the mini map, or you could look at your X-ray and be like, okay, he has this line. Off of that, you decide how you want to swing. Maybe you're not U-Haul. Maybe you're even towards here. Maybe in the enemy smoke and getting ready to swing out with a sky blind or just yourself. That could also work because that naturally create a team play off of 2 players controlling the fights in 80%. So any questions right now? I have room to answer maybe 2 or 3 questions before we go into the next sequence topic. How do you hold an angle without worrying about someone else swinging from another angle you aren't holding? So for you want to specifically, that's more of a like isolate the fight where it's hard. Like I like to angle myself where like I'm doing off angles where like I'm guaranteed to take first on one player and not be exposed to too many positions. So if you look at a map like let's just say Icebox, everybody knows Icebox, or even no, let's actually say Haven because it's in a pool. So if you were to walk down mid and you wanted to hold here, like let's just say grass, I'll personally keep extending outwards like this, where if you are worried about the window angle, this player has to overextend and swing you, rather than like you are passively holding from up here. And it's an easier swing for this player to get you. Same thing for A. So let's just say like you just want to swing along. If you swing out too much like this way, you might be exposed to this position, right? So maybe you want to swing a little bit further back so you're not exposed to short, but you're taking the fight where you want to take the fight. You make the other angle that you're worried about overextend to try to get you or not be visible to it. For me, a lot of the time I force myself to be overly flexible as a player to have a sense of peace. Should I just drop this mentality and what should I do? So, Rebirth, did you play more of a initiator role per se? Like maybe like more of a supporty, more smokes, like you control a lot of these scenarios, right? I would say experiment using your own utilities to actually set up your own fights. So even like a Fade, if you play Fade on on bind or on pro. Let's just use pro. You could use your dog, where you could guide your dog per se. Have your gun out a lot sooner. Don't guide it so that you can pull out your gun, and then use that as a bait to challenge the guy that's getting trolled by it. Same thing with the C's. If you throw a C, swing with the C's. You don't always have to throw C's and like hide. Even same thing for an eye. Sometimes I like to throw an eye from like back sight, like this. Like I play Fade, by the way. I play Fade with my team. That's why I like I'm very insightful on this. It's like I could throw like a Fade eye from secret, let them know that I'm secret, and then I actually position myself like towards flower. And then they hard clear flower, or they hard clear like secret thinking I'm there, and I off angle myself here because I threw the Fade eye for myself. Especially with things like healer's advantage. I hold an angle often. Times I get swung and instantly one tap before I could even react. So I play on higher ping. There's moments where I do believe you should be swinging on a timing. So let's just say like if you know the enemy is coming out of a certain choke, so let's just say Haven, right? This is a very common choke. So you're playing default, or you're even playing green box. Let's just say one of these angles. And the enemy is coming out this way. And the whole plan is to like obviously hold for the CT run up, but at some point, you could kind of imagine like how if you were the breach player, how would you be clearing your angles? Maybe you're clearing like this first, and then you angle yourself out to clear this, and then you work your way to like clearing back sight. But within those kind of windows of like what angle they're clearing, you want to take a timing swing. I call it all the time, but where I'm like, I'm gonna take a swing on a timing because I'm disrupting how he's clearing. So maybe he cleared me first, he's working way towards the locks because I hear him, and then I swing and shoot him. Rather than like hard holding this position, like especially like if you're playing like graffiti, if you're like hard holding this position all the time, sometimes it's very hard to like always win this fight because like the player's swinging out and just killing you, right? But sometimes if you kind of like angle out slightly, disrupt the swing, like the flow of them clearing, you could actually win your fight if you swing on a timing. So you can experiment with the timings. Maybe sometimes you go a little too early. Other times you could like do it even later or off of someone. So let's just say like your whole player takes first contact and then you swing the other player that's clearing from CT. All right. Everyone hold your question for now. If I didn't get to you, don't be afraid to repeat the question. I'm going to get back to my notes so we can go to the next topic. All right. And then one last thing of this section right here when it comes to like mental cluttering and overthinking. Our whole goal is to avoid mental clutter, which is like your processing power is just maxed out to the brim. So it's like when you're in a very high difficult class in like university or high school, way advanced, the teacher's going way too fast. You're still thinking about like square one and they're like talking about square four and I'm like, okay, I have no clue what's going on. You know, I'm trying to avoid players being clueless because they're just so overstimulated and maybe stuck up on like the past things that they wish they could have done better or thinking they need to do. And then this is kind of just like a little bit of factual. If everyone wants to read this, a little like side note before we go into the next segment. It thrives on challenge skill. It's very challenge skill balance. If not overload, when you're overthinking, you're tipping into anxiety and proof. Flow state evaporates. So the solution again is priority tasking, your flow reset button. And everyone is going to be slightly different, okay? And actually, 1 second, please. I'm going to throw this on the side. Okay. Everyone's is going to slightly look different. So what I mean by that, the Rova Lurker, his 80% might look a lot different than a Silva or Breach or like an Astra start. So if you're to play Chamber on Haven, maybe your 80% tempo is to work more slow mid, to work more towards A. And let's just say if you're playing Jet and you're playing with Silva, maybe you won't start as mid as often because you really want to fight the players A long. And your kit is like you're thinking of like diving in a lot more compared to Chamber, where like he's not necessarily like diving in for the team, but he's more like working his picks and working lurk timings, right? So just understand that every row comes up from a different place of mind. So maybe sometimes you need to educate them like, hey, I'm gonna do my 80%, which is like diving, or let's just say like you're the smoke player where like you're like I'm gonna get into my smoke after I throw it, and your plays are going to be naturally to your role, and that's gonna be perfectly okay. In terms of how to get back when you realize you are thinking like standing and coming back, taking a deep breath. Yeah, I do breathing exercises for my when I tend to see myself like overstimulated or getting tensed up. Sometimes I even do like a little posture check. And also too, like I even like supplements help a lot too. Like I know L-theanine is very popular. You could look into like vitamin D because actually it helps with like energy levels. Magnesium if you drink coffee a lot. Reduce your caffeine intake as well. I know that the more caffeine intake, you could develop more anxiety from my experiences with users and myself. But yeah, going back to the roles. So every role, there's a reason why you chose the role that you want to play, and it ties to your strength. Maybe the role that you're currently playing doesn't thrive in the ways that you want to play the game. I originally started as a controller player, and I came from a meta where you were very passive, you're AFK 24/7, and I felt like I was a more proactive player. So I took the leap into switching to initiator, where I felt like I could dictate a lot of the pace. I had a lot more util for myself and for my team, and I feel like because of that, I had a lot of like round changing moments that I feel like I was thriving in, rather than like in controller player where I felt more uncomfortable most of the time. But eventually, I learned that like I had to switch a couple of habits because I was switching to initiative player where like it would have been good on a controller, but it wasn't that recommended on initiative or flash player, you know. So yeah, going back to like my 80/20 rule again, that's kind of like a different way to word it. Is like controlling your fights, answers to your reason conditioning, and keeping note of tempo. So when I say note of tempo, this is everybody's like own personal notes. Maybe the lurker notices that they're not over rotating anymore. Maybe the jet player notices that they fall back a lot when I push them off the line. This is more for like 2 and 3 to help with each other. And it's good that like players are capitalizing on your reads because like you're playing the game for a reason. Like you should practice your self-awareness skills to leverage and create advantages, and that would develop into something that could be used very consistently. Even on days that you're not shooting straight, there's gonna be free kills because you made a good read. You condition the map very well. Where like even like your just use your own body of where you start is considered conditioning. The Killjoy always playing C for 30 rounds straight. That's considered conditioning. You could play somewhere else. You throw off your own tempo, and then you could go back to playing C. Simple things like that could create these rounds where like maybe if you fool just 1 or 2 enemies, that is enough to create a good enough advantage to win the game. And prior to number 2, one teammate read out of timing. This is more of like this is a little bit more advanced, so I wouldn't like take this as you please, but this is more of like a team setting where like if too many players have like too many reads at once, too many cooks in the kitchen, I tend to see everyone getting too overstimulated, not knowing what call to follow. So that's why it's very important to have like some sort of like hierarchy where like not hierarchy as in like dictatorship. That's not what I ever mean, but like there's a reason why like the IGO is more trusted on your team because they consistently create the most win conditions for your team. So we want to trust the IGO first and not always overcall him so that he could get in flow, he could capitalize on his strengths, and everyone is kind of like working like in sync in some sort of way. And then simplest path to win, calm myself down, crack a joke, moments of silence to lock in. This is also really big right here. I know that a lot of players, like you've seen probably like voice comms where like you hear Sentinels calm, you hear G2 calm, they're very chaotic. But then when you watch a team like Counter-Strike, for example, when you watch FaZe Clan or you watch Na'Vi, their voice comes a lot more calm. But like every environment is very different. If you're in a team setting, like it's always good to like talk about like the problems that you have, the what environment that everyone thrives in. Maybe like the team is more serious, but another team could be a lot more like laid back to play at their best. And this is more of like a team like environment thing. Like I'm the guy that likes to crack jokes, you know, like that's how I calm myself down in my team. Is I like to say a few things here and there, no matter who we're playing against. So going back to tempo, I kind of mentioned a little bit about like how do you play it, but like maybe some players this is very new to you. And this is where I am going to go more into the in-depth of like how can we actually apply this for everyone now. Like this is good knowledge. Maybe everybody like has a good sense of like what everything I talked about is. But now comes the next challenge. Let's apply it now to ourselves and our own practices. So for me, I think a pregame ritual is very important. Anchor your priorities. I have my own server where I have a text channel where I write down the things I'm focusing on for the day, get my mind straight to focus on, and I do my own warm up. And everybody's warm up could be different. I know Kyle, for example, he likes to aim train for 45 minutes before a match. I like to do less than that. I like to do half that time and offline about other 20 minutes of utility or watch a VOD. And then, like, if you're new to this, maybe something that you could try is set your one team rule. As a teammate, as a team, or yourself in ranked, you could help your brain focus on simpler plans to win the game. So maybe like even like per map, maybe you play per map differently. Maybe if you struggle on a particular map, dial in on something that could make your value more consistent. So for example, like I think that like on Sunset and Haven, I have a good Sova, but when I play a map like Corrode, I tend to have a little bit more problems. So I'm gonna like make sure that like on a map that I struggle on, I'm not going to autopilot as much because I know that I need to do some things different to create more value for myself. Does it make sense to everybody? Because I know that like a lot of people like when they get bind, when they get pro, they're like, oh, this is a map I don't like, and they just kind of like run it down. But in reality, that's a good exercise where you could control yourself, your own emotions, and to make it productive going forward. Hey, I noticed that on pro, I run down A little bit too much. Hey, I'm gonna try something different in this game. And then maybe you get pro again the next game because you know how ranked is sometimes. You get the 2 maps in a row, you're like, oh, I really didn't want to play pro, but here we are. Kind of got to work with what we got, right? So it's really good where you could break yourself out of habit because I do generally believe that like we all love to play Valorant, but we can make it a very miserable experience if we let our emotions get the best of us. So you could always change the moment something goes bad, like simply of like not necessarily avoiding it, but overcoming it. Hey, I noticed that I'm playing a map that I don't like. I'm going to try something different. And I'm going to really try my best to consistently get some value in this game, wherever the agent I'm on. I guess who has a 20% win rate pro? Okay, in the moment reset. So 3-second pauses. Don't be afraid to reset too. I think that a lot of players like they tend to like get a little bit too desperate when it comes to a lot of scenarios where like you get one kill, everyone's like feeling that adrenaline. You just win a clutch and you're trying to look for a fight right away. Don't be afraid to take a moment to breathe. Like sometimes too, like I'm not gonna lie. You can watch me with the VODs when I play with Kyle. Sometimes I'm playing like Sky on Bind. Before I do something, if I see a moment of silence, I'm gonna wait, I'm gonna chill a little bit, I'm gonna take a few breaths, recalibrate what I need to do in the round, and then I proceed to do it. While he's playing A. He doesn't know that I'm like resetting breathing. You don't need to let the team know that like you're chilling out, but like that's more of an individual thing that you don't need to necessarily like comment, right? You're like, okay, like I'm gonna take a few breaths. Like mentally, I'm telling myself like, all right, I just want a pretty big clutch. I just got a 4K on pro. Like I'm not going to say too much in the pre-round. I got to breathe a little bit, just focus on what the call is next round, unless he asks me what the call is, and we go from there. But because of that, like that allows me to be more consistent within my value and like to the team. And then post-play check, like balance score, right? Like again, right? Don't be afraid to like give yourself a little bit of feedback. I know that we're in a generation now where ADHD is very driven, like it's getting highly diagnosed by a lot of people and young minds. From my research, ADHD people tend to have more success of growth when they get immediate feedback. And so when you get yourself feedback, it doesn't always have to be critical and negative. Because like again, when you just get told something bad so much, you're gonna like mute it out of your brain. But so don't be afraid to just do a good comparison. Like it's not necessarily a quote, but it is a feedback to yourself. You're like, hey, I really like the way I play this game. But why did you play good that game? Oh, this is why I played bad. But just give yourself 1 or 2 reasons. And then you can go into the next game. Maybe if you can't achieve that mindset at all, maybe that's a sign of overworking and you just need to step away from your computer before you decide to tilt queue into another game. It's really good that like we're making the most out of our games that we play. I am a huge victim of this, where I don't care what I did in the score. I would just tilt queue away and I'll lose 4 games straight. I'll just keep deranking and I'll just go down this rabbit hole of losing RR that like I never realized that like I should just stop taking a break and mentally reset to make sure that like the next game I play, I'm not like providing the same level of frustration to my teammates for no reason. Like I'm playing with new people, you know, like why are they getting the bad end of the stick? And then there's kind of like a proven impact of like without priority tasking and with priority tasking, you have overthinking, you have forced plays turns over, you have teammates friction, low chemistry, right? Maybe like when you're all over the place, you're not so consistent, so that could create a little bit of team friction. This is more of like a team setting too, for anyone here. And then with priority tasking, like you get more efficient shots, you get more balanced reads, that creates stress, that adds up more assists over time, or just like more kills or more trades. And then your practices become more realistic because now everyone is starting to like focus on one or two things at a time. And throughout time, like that just adds up more. And even challenger teams have a problem with this. Like I think a lot of challenger teams like kind of just like show up and play in practice. They don't like server run, they don't like dry run, they don't like offline. Like they're not like as good as like people think they are as teammates. They're just good at shooting in the game. And I feel like if they at least applied some sort of like priority tasking, they could definitely make a lot more time for themselves in terms of like how they grow. So for me personally, Casey, I think that like I don't think this should be like, sorry for my language, or like this should not be like a who has a bigger dick challenge. Like I personally believe like burning bridges in ranked is not worth it. Never worth it. It's more worth it to just focus on the present and future and how you can win out the game than proving that you're the better player or you make more money or you're not fat as them. Like that, none of that matters. End of the day, you chose to play this game to not argue with people. I don't think people queue this game to like have smack talks left and right, have a rap battle. I generally think you play the game because you want to enjoy it, but I don't think that's part of the experience. Like I really think like I think people should really be realistic with themselves. Like I mute the enemy chat when I play ranked. Like I'm gonna be real. Like as soon as Swamp 70 says it, that's it. That's it. My warning was when I loaded in the server. If someone says something on the enemy team that is completely like unrelated, they're muted. Teammates on the other hand, I maybe lower a couple volumes and maybe that kind of go down from 50 to maybe 30 or 20. You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna lower the volumes so I can focus on myself and make sure I'm productive. Don't get me wrong though. Like I like if the room is right, if the like I could tease them sometimes, like you know, like nasty my way of like my frustration. Like I make some jokes, I crack some jokes too. Like I let them know sometimes, like if someone baited me and we're winning, he's having a good time. Like I crack a joke or two at him. I'll be like, hey man, like are you scared to play the game? Like I can say that, but like if a guy's clearly not having it, like I'm not gonna risk it. Like there's no way, no way. That's a bomb that's about to take off and explode. You know, like I'm gonna let that guy chill. I sometimes even defend the player. Sometimes like if Arena is like just like going off on his own and just doing his own thing, I'm just gonna assume he had a bad day. But like when my other teammates are trying to like tell him what to do, blah blah blah, I just know that just never ends well. I just tell my teammates like, yo, just let him do his own thing, bro. We just gotta play our game. Like, and I've won games because of that, by the way. I actually defended that player and he actually ended up trying. Not necessarily comment as much, but like they do try and like they end up like doing more than you think. When do I change your main focus? Right, vague when I thought I'll shoot. When do you change your main focus? A lot of times when you give yourself self-criticism, just make sure that like it's criticism to allow you to like play better and to make yourself more comfortable on the server. I think a lot of players like when they learn about the game, they try to be too much of a team player from the advice that they're given. But in reality, like they're actually losing themselves value. Even coaches sometimes give really bad advices where I generally believe I'm like, hey, like this player had a really good timing. Like, why are you telling him not to do it? Like this could have won us around. I think everything that led up to that moment was good, but you're telling him that like he needs to play safe because he has all his util. You know, like there's gonna be times where like I have a fade dog, I have a fade eye, but I just have such a good timing on this player that I'm gonna take it. This tends to happen to a lot of like support players usually with that level of advice. Like my open players, like they're afraid to die because they have two smokes. All right. Surprisingly, that is the end of my documents here. And for everyone here, just to give everyone, would everyone be interested in looking at a VOD? So anyone, name your favorite player, I'm gonna pull them up in a match, and I'm gonna help everyone here to adjust a little bit of how you could actually VOD review and extract from what I talked about. Leaf, I like Leaf. Okay, everyone's slowing. Okay, wait, okay, everyone one at a time. Oh my god, okay. We got Kane, less. Yeah, hold on. Okay, Nature. Okay, I should have really thought about that. Okay, Xander. Okay. Okay, thank you. See my name? Octagon? Your face? Okay, we're gonna look at Mata. Wait, you want to say Mata? Someone say Mata real quick. Okay, thank you. Okay, we're gonna go over Mata. I see Mata in there. Alright, perfect. Like that. Fast landslide. Alright. So the reason why I'm doing this, because when players look at like matches, you think of like a team cohesion. You think of like everyone playing to the T. They're getting paid thousands of dollars every day to play the game. This is never relatable to ranks, but in reality, even Envy, if you watch Envy specifically in Challengers, if you watch Challengers and watch Envy, they're very individual based and that allow their team to win the game. And I'm saying this because I want to display that like everyone here, it's very important to get your micros down on your agents, on your roles per map. And then no matter the team that you join, you're still a good multiplier rather than like always being too reliant on your team to create value. So we're going to look at Mata. And let's look at like a few rounds. We got some time. We got 15 minutes. Let's look at some maps. Corrode. I'm going to play them Corrode today. Let's go over Corrode. Boom. Sometimes a rebirth, honestly, the way I'd break it down is like at least you can have one initiator. You're gonna have two duelists most of the times. At least as long as you have a smoke duelist and one some sort of scan or flashes. I don't care what any other agent is, and that could be in any order. I know ranked is very scuffed nowadays. You don't get that optimal of comps. It's going to happen. But I just generally break it down to that where like I'm too focused on myself on improving in ranked because I am like invest my time into that. Like I don't think you should always fill, but obviously the better lobbies that you get into, if you really feel like you should have that one or two agents behind you, go ahead and do it. But for the most part, I recommend just making two agents, playing within those two agents on any comp, and working with that. We could work something out. I could definitely like discuss about making the document more available to the public. Yeah. As teased too, by the way. I am doing something for Top Frag within that department. Right, Quinn? You got that? You hear that? We'll sort it out. Yeah, do that. I'm saying that like we have something in the works for the community or for like a program that has yes. But I can't say anything more, you know. We have it in the works. Alright, anyways, let's go back to this VOD real quick. And we're going to just pay attention to Mata. Don't worry about too much of the team play. Don't worry about what the team macro is. Let's just break down of like how is Mata playing Waylay and controlling his fights. Okay? So boom. Alright, they're starting on an attack. Look at how Mata, they're working towards A first round. Works up A main. He's just working his own pace. Notice how his team is kind of like just working along with his timing, right? Is that like him being forced? He got spammed, that's unlucky, but like again, that's already a good example, right? He's working his own timing, but it's not Mata thinking about like, oh, how's my team is following up with me? No, like let me work my angles. Kyle says the same thing to me, like when Kyle leads a pack, let him work. If he wants to go slow, we go slow. If he wants to go fast, we better be ready to follow and kill. And we'll follow the kill. So he dies, that's fine. We can skip this round. Let's focus on X. I'm not too worried about the eco round too much. Yeah, they just get like sprayed down. That's fine. Let's go to the first gun round. But again, do you see how like Mata is playing? So like maybe his first step in a team setting was to create the space early for his team to come through that choke, right? But after that, do you see how he kind of like just pauses and he just chills Because now he's worried about like what if his fights that he's going to be receiving. He's going to be receiving probably like an A-Link fight, some sort of utility, so he doesn't like swing too early. He's not swinging top mid at the same time of like worrying about like the smoke. He's digesting it down. He's breaking it one thing at a time. He's focused on this fight right here, which is like the smoke, before he worries about top mid. He's not worried about top mid because he's not exposed to it. Sometimes like players overthinking like, how can I know this? Because like they're swinging this and they instantly swing top mid immediately without a second thought. It's just off of impulse, you know. But you see how like his swings a lot more like more conscious. Like he's more conscious about like what he's fighting and intent for. You play mid again. So like let's just say like you're put into Mata's shoes. Okay, I'm gonna start mid again. I just dashed lower mid this round. Do I want to do anything different? If I do, it's probably because like they're probably gonna do something mid, right? Maybe you're in an elo where like you could get away with doing the same thing. Honestly, like that works. There's gonna be games like that where like you're like, okay, I could get away with this. I'm gonna keep doing it until I get punished, right? But anyways, again, right? Like even though you're a duelist player, do you see how like he's not forcing himself to create space for his team? It's not necessary. As of right now, he's just a player. He's just worried about his fights. He gets smoked off. He can't just run through it and just instantly die. He's just taking his time. He's just chilling. Maybe the game plan was it was a hit B, and now he's worrying about, okay, we're hitting B. How can I, like, what do I have to do on this B hit for myself to get a kill? Maybe think about the way he wants a path, right? Do you see how like he's not instantly going out? He's taking his time, jump spotting a little bit, right? He missed it slow, but that was a slow for backside. So off of these like few rounds alone, like these last four rounds, not necessarily like they're equal, but do you see how like even like at a world championship level, do you see how like a player like Mata in his role, he's still focusing on himself and making sure like he's winning these exchanges, like he's not rushing, he's not like swinging instantly because he's a duelist. Like there's a lot more like these moments that like players could like really take away. We're like, wow, like even the best players doing this, I could like work on this. Was he holding that angle to give enough time for the team to come out on site? I think it's more of like yes and no. Like I think that was like maybe offline, but in the moment, he's also considering the fact that like maybe this player is trying to swing elbow on him, and he doesn't want to swing immediately because maybe the guy's instantly holding him, so he's gonna take his time on that fight. So he's like messing up his timings. Yeah, no, it looked like he was definitely just like working his own timings, and his teammates were just like following up on him. Yeah, it's just the pieces that like added up together. Right, everyone, that is the end of my notes and a little bit of a VOD. I hope that was a lot more fun than I anticipated. I enjoyed it. This is my first community call for Top Frag. I generally like this was a really big audience. I did not expect this number. I'm gonna be honest. I was kind of just asking like, hey, you're free to do this call? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Let's just see where it takes me. And then I joined the call. I'm like, wow, there's like 40 people in here already. I'm like, wow, this is quite some good stuff. Better than chess free coaching. I'm just underrated. I'm a miracle worker. What can I say? I appreciate it. You guys are ready. I appreciate that.